Hello and welcome to the latest in our Saturday Spotlight interviews. My name is Anna Mealy and I'm from North East Animal Rights. We're delighted today to welcome along David Rams, who is an animal rights activist. So welcome, David, and thank you very much for agreeing to do this for us.
Right, yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm very happy to be here and have a chat with you guys.
Brilliant. So we'll go straight to the questions if that's okay with you. So
Sure.
first of all, a question which I ask everyone, which is, can you tell me about your vegan journey, please?
Yeah, so I was raised vegetarian, and so I've always been raised with a care for animals, or some level of respect, at least for sure. Even though I was consuming other animal products, but it wasn't because I didn't know anything. Neither did my mum. She thought vegetarianism was the be all end all. But yeah, I had these young
Yeah.
important lessons from like a young age. My mum's story, actually, she saw a slaughter truck carrying sheep. That's She saw that when she was 16, and that's why she went vegetarian and then raised me the same, and both my brothers as well. And then she went vegan about 18 years ago, and I went vegan 5 years after that, and I'm still vegan today for the reasons that, which I'm sure all your listeners know. But yeah, because it's quite simple for me. I just refuse to hurt animals for things that I don't need, and that's why I remain vegan, and that's why I will always be vegan, because I'm never going to think it's okay to hurt an animal for something that I don't need. I don't see why anybody would, but hey, that's unfortunately the world we live in right now, where a lot of people do, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's interesting to say. You've actually sort of kept it very simple there. It's about you have a choice. You don't need to do it. So why would you choose the cruel option?
Mm.
Um, so your style of activism is you're quite vocal and quite direct. So your
Mm.
social media platforms. Why did you choose the platform to use and your approach? And how successful do you
Mm.
think that your particular style is?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I'll tell you about why the style that I chose and why I chose it. So, um, I mean, from my perspective, I mean, I come from quite and let's call it like, I don't know, working class and lower background, less educated, underserved community, basically, as welfare, council estate. That's where I come from. Now, obviously, it's not. I wouldn't consider myself that anymore. So I've changed my life, and I'm kind of in a different place now, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But my point is that coming from that background, coming from that experience, that's who I am at my core. It's someone from one of these, council estates. You know what I mean? That's where I was raised up on. So that's who I am, and that's my activism style. You'll see, kind of goes with that, because I try to be more salt of the earth, more say it as it is kind of thing. Not really trying to like educate, but just trying to talk to people, give them some real direct, no BS kind of real talk, real talk. And that's because most people fall into that category. If we look at the world population, most people are living in the types of communities that I just discussed. They're not rich and very super well educated, people going and doing, I don't know, they're not posh, is what I'm trying to say here. Most people are not. They're more salt of the earth, and what I'm talking about. So I feel like that's my area, and I couldn't be anything else, could I? Because that's it's me. So it works out. Um, so I do that on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, because combined, that's where you get the most reach. That's just, there's no argument. I mean, you could say TikTok, but I mean, I would not recommend anybody use TikTok, to be honest with you. That's a whole other conversation. But YouTube Shorts right now
Yeah.
is basically YouTube's version of TikTok, and it's brilliant. And it's that's you can reach non-vegans very easily. If anyone's thinking about starting up, I'd start there. And then you asked how successful it is. Do I think I'm being?
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't give you, yeah, I can't give you data on it. And by the way, there's a bit of a delay. In case people watching are
Mm.
wondering why if I'm talking over you at any point, it's because there's a huge delay. But we'll be all right. We'll be all right. But yeah, I don't have any data on how successful what I'm doing is. But I can tell you, I get messages, I get comments of people saying they've changed, and that I've helped them change, and I've helped them stay vegan as well, which is great. But I won't oversell that, because I can't prove it or anything. But like I said earlier, it's not like I could do anything different, right? When it comes to my social media presence, that's me. And if I weren't being me, I would be lying. And I've chosen very precisely to be as authentic as I can be, because that's all anyone can give is themselves. If you pretend or act and try to be something else that you're not, well, one, people will be able to tell and they'll call you out. They'll say, like, oh, you're trying to be something you're not. And it comes across inauthentic and unbelievable. And the second thing, which is probably the most important thing, you're going to burn out. Because if you're being something you aren't or trying to be something you aren't, like if you're like me from a council estate and you want to be like Earthling Ed, it's not going to work out because that's not who you are at your core. It's not, you know what I mean? And so it's not sustainable. So you've got to be conscious of what you have to give and give it, and don't try and be somebody else. So and even if that means that maybe your way is not quite as effective as, say, Earthling Ed, well, it is effective because that's what you are, that's what you do. You can't be him, so stop trying to compare yourself to someone like him, for example. That's my advice to
Yeah.
anybody wanting to kick off
That's
with this kind of stuff. Be yourself.
You've made a few good points there. I mean, we do TikTok, we do we do YouTube, TikTok, we do the whole lot with varying degrees of success. I mean, our YouTube channel is teeny. TikTok, it's a very different audience, and it's so incredibly frustrating to kind of like to try and get any meaningful sort of interaction.
Oh yeah.
So I do put my preferred ones are Facebook and Instagram.
Mm,
But I would love to be able to develop the YouTube side of it, because YouTube is accessible for all age groups, all sort of backgrounds,
right.
and when you're talking about being authentic to yourself, my background is quite similar. It's obviously council estate, very working class. Um,
Mm,
Got my education, sort of higher education much later in life. Um, so I'm kind of like trying to use, what my experience is to educate people about. I mean, I go into schools quite a lot. And again, that's about being who I am. I know how I can kind of help like younger children to talk about veganism, and talk on the streets with people of doing outreach.
mm,
Um, I don't think I could do what you do either. So
right.
it's I'm not obviously not very comfortable doing the sort of like the YouTube sort of stuff, which you're
Mm,
really good at. But yeah, I think it's we have a place for all types of activism, because they all
yeah.
have different degrees of success to them.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, you can only do what you can do. You can learn new skills, of course, and try and learn new skills, and but if it doesn't match with your who you are and you don't feel comfortable and there's no need to be scared of things that you've never done before. Try it and try it for a good time. Try and really learn it. But if it doesn't work out, then okay, shift and don't feel ashamed if that's not your thing. Like talking to people in the street isn't your thing, or
Yeah,
YouTube isn't your thing, or whatever.
yeah,
You got to keep going until you find what it is, and then become the best in the
yeah,
world at it. I mean, that's ultimately what you've got to do. If you
mhm,
can't be the best in the world at what you're doing, then okay, change to something you can be the best in the world at then, because then you're going to be better at it and it's going to be more effective and it's going to be more sustainable,
yeah,
right? There's no use plugging away at
yeah,
something that
yeah.
you find incredibly just that's not sustainable.
Yeah. So, do you have any stand-up moments for you as an activist? For example, have you, ever spoke to someone who you thought would just never get it, or they did, or a particular approach which took an unexpected turn? Either when you've
Mm.
been doing a live, or when you've actually been talking to someone at an event or something.
I mean, to be honest with you, my standout moments are not with people; they're with animals. Because my activism is not just
Right.
YouTube and talking to people. Actually,
Yeah.
I've done and do a lot of work directly with animals. So my standout moments, have been where I've literally got to, saved animals' lives. Like that's been my standout moments by far. And there's nothing. I mean, you're convincing people. I've got stories of that as well, but there's no there's nothing that stands out more than having someone
Yeah.
taken from hell and taking them to literal heaven. I'm talking like we have done that multiple times, taken an animal from hell on earth to heaven on earth, and that's there's no feeling that comes close to that. But yeah, I've had people change from conversations, like very emotional conversations, and some of them are actually online, some of them are on my channel. I think there was one pretty good one, a guy, he was an ex-vegan, and we had a long conversation about it live, like a debate, and it went lots of different ways, but in the end I felt like I hadn't really done the best job, and I felt like maybe I haven't appealed to him. He seemed very cold. And then just a couple days later, he emailed me and told me that actually he realized he was completely wrong, and yeah, and he's vegan now.
Mm,
So that was really cool, because it seemed like I wasn't getting anywhere, and it was a good
mm,
lesson to show you that even if you feel like you're getting nowhere, don't beat yourself up, because you just never know, right? You never know. He was stubborn
mm,
as hell all the way through the conversation, but then a
mm,
couple of days later he came
mm.
round. So
Yeah. I remember Joey said something which we use quite a lot, that you don't know where somebody is on their journey. It could be you literally have the
Hmm.
first vegan they've spoken to, but actually you could be the person they've had a few conversations, and you were the one who actually kind of like makes them make that final step. So it's kind
Yeah,
of, so all of these interactions are really, really important.
yeah,
So how
definitely.
much progress do you think we've made as a movement in the last sort of, maybe the last decade? I mean, I know that
Mm,
in terms of what's available in the shops, plant-based food wise, we've made massive strides. But
yeah.
do you think we're making general progress as a movement? And is there any area which you find particularly frustrating because we don't seem to be pushing forward with it?
So, I mean, if you're looking at things from a commercial perspective, as in vegan products and the market for vegan food and vegan products, when I say vegan food, I mean vegan specialty items, then it's exploded. And so commercially, it seems great. The technology's improving. There's lab meats now, and there's 3D printed meat and things like that. And I know the whole lab meat, there's a debate on that. I know but the point is it's probably not for vegans. However, it's a fantastic solution. That well, it'll aid in the general wide scale of things, is to close down farms and slaughterhouses. Lab meat will be a solution for that. It won't be a solution for animal exploitation though, because they exploit animals to make lab meat, right? So we know that. But the point is, technology is improving to the point where sooner or later, animal products will just be just pointless. People will say, "Oh, why would I want to buy things that came from a farm when I could just buy things that came from a pristine lab?" Like, look at a farm and all the shit and all the disease and the
Yeah,
the blood and the pus, and then look at this lab, a clean lab where it's just made in a factory. I mean, they're both factories, but one of them's a lot cleaner and efficient, and the other one's full of
yeah,
horror and death. And even if you don't care about the ethics, it's full of shit and disease. Um, so yeah, I guess the point is that, well, it seems like there's a lot of progress. Unfortunately, as there are other countries that historically didn't eat much meat, for example, that are now eating like 10 times the amount they used to. So, and these countries have massive populations. So, unfortunately, we're not seeing like a decrease of overall animal
yeah,
consumption, even though the technology is rapidly improving. But it is the future. That is what's going to happen, because as this technology improves, eventually it's going to get to all these different countries. It'll become cheaper to make animal products with the technology versus with animals, and it'll change. There'll be a whole different world brought around. So that's coming. But about what do I find frustrating? I mean, I find that frustrating, the fact that these countries which historically ate very, very minimal animal products are now really speeding up. That's really frustrating and sad. Like countries like India, which historically had a very
yeah,
low meat consumption, it's crazy now, like, how many people there are starting to introduce meat into their diets, and it's a real shame. That's frustrating. I don't know what the answer to that is. It's a cultural shift that you can't really stop. I mean, there are activists out there are
yeah,
trying, but it's too strong. This Western influence, which is ironic considering in the West meat is now getting a really bad name, but in the East it seems to be like following the West, but with the delay. I don't know. It's that's frustrating to me. Yeah.
yeah. I wonder if it's maybe to do with the kind of like the perception of meat as a like a luxury product almost.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Maybe
Definitely.
that that it's obviously very cheap to live a true vegan diet, plant-based diet.
Mm.
Maybe it's kind of like it's something they aspire to have. A
Mm.
bit like sort of in the medieval times when royalty used to have all
Hmm.
the big animals, and the poor people didn't.
Right.
Maybe that's what it is.
Totally.
I don't know, but I know I get
Totally.
frustrated when I see things like that in China, when you see these multi-story intensive farms, and they're absolutely
Right.
just horrendous, horrendous. Yeah.
No, definitely. Yeah.
So, sorry. So how much do you feel? I mean, we are kind of like in 2023, but we've had
Mm.
activists sort of like going before us. Very well-known activists,
Mm.
Ronnie Lee, all those sort of Mel Broughton who are still doing things. So how do you feel? How much do we owe to those activists? Who have gone
Mm.
before us? And are there any activists out there who you particularly admire at the moment?
I mean, I didn't. I kind of understood the question. Like you sent me these questions through and I had a look at them. This one I found the way I'm just like saying because I've seen them, but just someone's wondering, what do you mean you understood the question? Yeah, I read it before. Okay, guys.
It might sound like we're rambling, but we're not. It's all perfectly calculated rambling.
Exactly. And the way you said it in the question is, what do we owe them? I don't know. I guess, I mean, I find that I don't know what that necessarily means, but I would say, like, I don't think we owe anybody anything really, but I would say that we absolutely should. When someone's done something for a longer time and they've been around the block, they've got interesting insights that can help us navigate the modern world. Like, for example, that's why people study history, because most things that happen in
Yeah,
today's world have happened like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and longer, thousands of years ago. Like, we talk, oh, we've got this technology now. What do you not think that was the case when the Romans started building loads of cool shit? Of course it was. They had loads of technology too, and the
yeah,
Egyptians too. So whatever we're
yeah,
experiencing, other people have already experienced. So it's smart to look back and take some cues. I think that's
yeah,
definitely where um, some of these
yeah,
older hardcore activists come in, and that's why I've had Ronnie Lee on my podcast. It's why on my live stream I'm
yeah,
going to have Roger on as well for some debates and stuff, because yeah, their perspectives are very interesting, and although they 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 definitely have some ideas that lots of activists might consider to be I don't know, but they don't agree with or whatever. It's good to have the perspectives for
mm,
debate, and obviously I've got huge amounts of respect for everything they've done and continue to do. And I think also something else I want to point out is that it's not only, I mean, there's obviously there's Roger Yates, there's Ronnie Lee, there's lots of activists out there that have like profiles, like public profiles, but there are also a ton that deserve a lot of admiration, a lot of respect that we will never hear about. And you could even argue that the ones
yeah,
we'll never hear about are actually the ones doing the most important work, because the reason we can't hear about them is
mm,
because if we hear about them, then they can't do their jobs, if you follow me. There are definitely people
yeah,
out there who have operated undercover probably for the last 20, 30 years and
mm,
nobody knows. And you know, these people, they deserve absolutely monstrous respect, and it's a shame that they'll never be able to get this
mm,
kind of, you know, pat on the back. I mean, it's not why they do it, but it means a lot, and some of these people will never get it
yeah,
because they choose to stay under the radar. They
mm,
There's a lot of people out there that deserve a hell of a lot of respect, is what I'm trying to say. That includes the people we've mentioned, and also
yeah,
all the ones who are watching that can't come out and
yeah,
publicly be, you know, thank you. Please keep doing what you're doing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's dead right. I mean, there's so many people. I mean, whose names I don't know. I mean, we mentioned Ronnie Lee a few times there. I've got a huge
Mm,
respect for Ronnie because he's been there, done it, got the T-shirt. He's still going. I mean, I know he does a podcast called Still Alive, which is brilliant.
mm, mm,
And I do have a lot of fun watching it. But yeah, there's so many people out there, and it's really, really important to recognise those who aren't as public because of the nature
mhm.
of what they're doing, but they are saving lives and making animals' lives better on a daily basis and have
Yeah,
done for a long time. So let's
absolutely.
go a little bit closer to home now. So what do your friends and your families think about your chosen lifestyle? Because we all have this debate that like our
Mm,
group is our vegan family, and those
mm.
outside of it don't kind of get it. You know, we have this eureka moment, and the family and friends don't get it. So how do you
Yeah.
cope with that? And how do you cope with trolls on your sort of like pages on your social media?
All right. Yeah. I mean, I cope with the family friends situation. Well, my mum is vegan, so that's taken care of. My youngest brother's vegan,
Yeah,
and the middle brother's
yeah,
vegetarian. And I like the way. I mean, the middle brother. I've had my run-ins with him, and I'm going to do a video about that a recent run-in I had with him. But other than that, I try to wear different hats for different scenarios. This is something I've learned from the last. I mean, I've been vegan for 13, going on probably closer to 14 years now. Probably is 14 years. I lose track, to be honest with you, but it's somewhere between 13 and 14 years. And over this time, and I've been veggie my whole life, so I've had constant conflicts with people, and I've learned over the years the
yeah,
answer is not to, you know, be a little pussy and stay quiet. That's what I used to think the answer was, and then that was wrong. But and that's why I do what I do now. But actually, the real answer is kind of also sometimes that. So you've got to be respectful, but you've got to know and pick your battles. So what I tend to do now, I realize, and I've told myself this, and I tell everybody else this: you can't be an activist 24/7. It's not possible. You will burn out, and you'll be useless to everybody, but especially you'll be useless to animals. So it's just not worth it. Stop trying that if that's what you're trying to do. The best way, I mean, how I cope with non-vegan friends is I'll tell them, if we're going out to eat, then you're eating vegan, please. And if you won't eat vegan with me, then I'll either meet you after your meal or we all eat at home and we do something, we go for a drink or something. So I kind of set that as
yeah,
these are kind of the restrictions, I suppose, or kind of like I don't know, they're not rules, but they're requests. And I'm not so brutal with the way I say it here. I say it nicely, like, hey, can we do this? Is it okay if we do it this way? That's how I'll talk about it. And so far, it's been pretty good. It's worked out pretty well, and it allows me to enjoy my time. We don't need to talk about veganism and animal rights, because this is social time. This is recovery time. I just don't put that stuff in my face, because then I'm going to have to talk about it. And if I ignore it, then I am being that pussy that grew up vegetarian and started to try to not want to talk to people because I was scared of the reactions. Like, I don't want to be feeling like that ever again, right? So this is why I make these decisions like this, because the alternative is you just fight with every friend that you've got that isn't vegan all the time, but they're not your friends anymore. You're an activist and they're the person you're trying to do activism to. That's not healthy, and you need actual friends. So take the activist hat off when you leave the house to go be the friends, put that friend hat on, and just try and enjoy a social time, and just make those arrangements to make sure you don't have to face them stuff in their face with animal products, because that puts you in a very, very awkward predicament where you want to say something and it's very uncomfortable. So that's how I handle all of that. And um and the reason, again, like, to take away, so this is not, some people have said, well, I want to keep doing activism and I want to push through this and I want to talk with my friends. And I'll just tell you that I know from personal experience and from the experiences of hundreds of people I've spoken to, that the rate of a successful conversation with friends and family is something like 2% success rate. I think 98% fail, 98% get in fights and arguments, have to leave home because of it, get kicked out, or their flatmate moves out, or they move out. It's just, you need to save your energy for stuff that actually is going to work. Like, talking to strangers is good, making videos, coming up with ideas for activism, going out and just save your energy for stuff that works. Don't waste it on meaningless conversations with friends and family who it won't listen to you anyway, because it's you, right? You're a friend or a family member. They need to hear it from
Yeah.
somebody else who's not so close to them most of the time. So that's how I handle it.
Yeah, I think the food part of it is really, really important because I do what you do, which is, if people can't eat plant based for like one meal when I'm there, I won't eat with
Mm,
them, because it's just such a, you don't. I mean, I have sort of drifted away from friends who would literally just sit there and eat animal flesh. Like meatballs is a particular one which I
mm.
remember, sitting there stuffing their faces with us, and I'm looking at what they're eating, and I just can't, you can't relax.
No,
So yeah, that's
and you
really
don't want to
important.
start a fight
It is
either.
important that you
You
do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with trolls? And so you must get,
Mm,
because of the kind of your approach, I'm presuming, I
yeah.
mean, I might be wrong here, but do you get your fair share of trolls?
Yeah. Yeah. I use them for, I mean, I've got this new kind of mentality around my channel. I used to try to kind of ignore them, or sometimes I'd be snarky, and I don't know, and I didn't really handle it so well back in the day. Nowadays, I've got a new perspective. My perspective is monetize the
Mm.
haters. So basically, when they give me these troll
Uh-huh.
comments and the horrible comments, I take the comments and I make content with them, and then YouTube pays me. So I'm basically getting, like, ad payments, right, from YouTube. That's how YouTube works. You get paid. They
Yeah,
they show ads on your
yeah,
videos, and then you get paid for it. That's how you make money on YouTube.
yeah.
So if I can take the shitty comments
Mhm.
and make funny content with it, that A, makes vegans feel good, B, makes some people look at them like, oh, look at those idiots, I don't want to be like that. So it's good for the animals, it's good for the cause,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
C, it makes money for an animal rights activist. So every hate comment they make puts money into an animal rights
yeah,
activist's pocket. It's a
yeah,
win-win. So this is how I handle it. And I recommend the
yeah.
same for everybody else as well. There's nothing that vegans like
Yeah.
more than getting
Mm.
together and laughing at trolls. Trust me, it's very, very
Yeah,
cathartic.
yeah,
Recommend it
yeah.
for everyone.
Yeah. It is actually, because we spend a lot of time in our chat, sort of like talking about, have you seen this? Have you seen the other?
Yeah.
And I have started using the troll comments on some of our TikTok and the YouTube shorts to try and respond to
Yep.
things
Very
like, oh,
smart.
there's an like I've got one to go out which says, why is all this vegan BS on my timeline? You know, so it's just kind
Mm.
of like picking the odd comment and using that one as
Mhm.
the content, and it is much
Great
more
idea.
therapeutic than kind of like going, get off my page. You know, if you're not a
Yeah.
vegan, don't come on my page, sort of thing. Because I think
Yeah.
VFC are really, really good at that.
They are
They're
great at
absolutely
it.
brilliant. I
Yep.
love seeing the stuff that they come out with. Yeah, absolutely
Mm,
brilliant. And when I spoke to Matthew Glover, he said it's his wife who pretty much comes up with all the responses to the troll comments, and they're absolutely
yeah.
they're just insanely funny.
Yeah, they are. They do a really good job.
So a bit more serious now. We talked about before we came on air about animal rebellion,
Mm,
and one of our lovely the some of you will have seen some of the viewers will have seen Animal Rebellion doing the Valentine's Day blockade of Westminster Bridge, and
mm.
some of the brutality afforded towards the protesters there. In particular, one of them was Josh, my lovely friend Josh, who was a huge fan of you, David. So if you wouldn't mind saying a hello to him, that would be great.
Course, yeah, Josh, mate. I heard about what happened, and sounds horrible. Sounds like they were really brutal with you. It's a problem in the UK right now, and look, all I can say is you're one of the bravest people for getting out there and continuing to do this, knowing how shitty they're being right now, and the police and how they're treating protesters. You're doing it for a great cause, so thank you for doing that, mate, and keep it up. Please keep doing it.
Cheers. I know that'll mean a lot to him. He's had a pretty hard week. But
Mm,
so, what do you think? You talked about the way obviously police are kind of like
mm,
changing the way they dealing with protesters, and it's more the government direction, isn't it? The government is kind of like given the public and the police like carte blanche now to to
mm.
focus protests in a different way. So, what are your sort of like
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
So this is going to be controversial, but I'll just, I think it's got to be said. So obviously this is terrible, and it's part of a dystopian future, isn't it? That where the police are stopping people from protesting about what things that are wrong in the world. But unfortunately, I think vegans we have brought this on ourselves, and let me tell you why I think that. So vegans, I mean, you might disagree with me here, but I'm sure you'll agree with me, but we'll see. Some people may disagree, but I think vegans tend to be politically left leaning, right? Like liberal leaning, whatever you want to call it. I'm using like more of an American
Yeah,
term here, but you get my point, right? Or even far left, kind of far left radical types tend to be vegan activists, animal rights activists tend to be your far left radical type people, and the average vegan is most likely going to be left leaning. But one thing that most individuals on this side of the political aisle have been gunning for a long time has been to control speech, to limit people's speech. And if you want an example of that, trying to get certain things in legally considered to be hate speech, for example. So now there's many examples I could give you where in some countries in the world, in the West, if you say one thing about somebody else, you can actually be charged by law for hate speech. Okay. And it's
yeah,
so you might say that's a good thing. A lot of people would say that's a good thing. It stops hateful speech, right? And on the surface, it seems like, yeah, it does. But then we have to ask the question, okay, but who gets to decide what is hateful speech? And then, okay, the government decides and public opinion decides. And who's making the public opinion? Well, right now, it's mostly people on the left. So it seems like it's a great thing. Yeah, people are getting what they want. But unfortunately, now look what's happening in the UK. They're shutting down certain speech. They're not allowing protests. They're actually being physically violent with protesters. Well, this is what happens when you gun for the government to control people and control their speech. You can't shut down one person from speaking because you don't like them and be surprised when the police also shut you down for speaking because now they've decided they don't want you to talk.
yeah,
When you give them the power to shut people down,
yeah,
don't be surprised when it turns around and hits you, because power is power. And if the people are calling for the people in power to have that kind of authority to shut down speech, it's just a matter of time before they come after you. So my solution to this is that anybody who's on the left or whatever, and vegans especially, need to stop calling for all of these limitations and these shutdowns of people's speech that they don't like, and instead anything that you find offensive or anything that you think is wrong, we need to be dealing with it ourselves as communities. We need to be shunning these types of people, not having the police step in and charge them or put them in jail or fine them, because it's just a matter of time before you get put in jail because you say something that lots of
yeah,
people find offensive. People don't like vegans. Do you see the kind of precedent we're setting? If we say, you shouldn't say that,
yeah,
I'm upset, and lots of us are upset, you should go to jail. Well, when is it going to happen then? That when people say, hey, you vegan, you said something that 99% of the UK doesn't like, you should go to jail. You see, it's all very subjective, and
yeah,
we're in a very tricky situation. So I genuinely think these abuses of power are coming from that, because hey, the general public loves it when when animal rights protesters get slapped. They love it, right? But we shouldn't be working by mob rule. We should be saying no, all speech legally should be allowed unless it incites violence. And then anything that is deemed unacceptable,
mm,
we will condemn it publicly. We'll condemn it as a society. Don't have the government step in, because then we end up with situations like this. And I know that's controversial,
mm.
but I
So,
really do feel we've kind
no,
of
no,
made our own
no.
bed here.
So I kind of like, yeah. So I kind of get that. So what you're saying is basically, if we have, if we are confronted with somebody who is being deliberately racist or
Mm,
deliberately sexist, we say to
mm,
them, we challenge them directly and say this is not acceptable, rather than kind of
mhm.
like bypassing and saying this person has committed like a hate crime. It's
Mm.
kind of like shunning that person and telling that person that they're not doing right. Yeah.
Right, and there's you can socially punish people for things. I mean, there's a whole obviously there's cancel
Mm,
culture and stuff like that, which is a whole other thing. But ultimately,
yeah.
the public opinion can be more powerful than the law anyway. And sometimes public opinion can be
Yeah.
important. Like if somebody has actually, if we confidently someone said something actually harmful and racist, like I hate X people because they are dirty, filthy, they deserve to die, or something like that, then of course, that's beyond
Yeah.
reasonable doubt.
Mm,
That's wrong. Okay, that's actually hateful. So as a society, what can we do? Well, okay, we can make sure everybody knows the person said that, and then employers would look at that. I don't want to hire that guy. So then, okay, we've already caused some damage. People would look at them and say, I don't want to be your
yeah.
friend. I don't want to be your friend. There's a lot, and I'm not saying that
Yeah.
that's like always the best solution to shun someone, because then they might go to some extremes. Maybe it's better to bring them
Yeah.
closer and say, actually, hey, can we talk about this? Like, why do you feel that way? Let's get to the bottom of
Yeah.
this. But if you bring in the government and the police and say, hey, now you need to put that guy in jail because of those words, I'm telling you, it's just happened. The government just shut down protesters, because this is what we're asking for. We're asking for the
Yeah.
government to step in on things that upset the public. Well, animal rebellion upsets the public on a daily basis, so of course they're going to step in. We can't pick and choose when it
Yeah.
suits us.
So one topic which is which was quite current,
Hmm.
and also you're obviously you did a short recent, I think the last yesterday or the day before, about 100 ex-vegans and the logical reasons why they gave
Hmm.
up veganism,
Yeah.
and we were absolutely outraged when we saw somebody who very well known, has a huge amount of following,
Yep.
and was actually booked to come to vegan camp out. He's now suddenly publicly declared he's no longer vegan. So we've had a few weeks ago, we had a particular issue with somebody who declared themselves, known to us in our group, who declared himself no longer vegan,
Oh,
um,
okay.
and we were just so disappointed. So what's your
Mm.
take on that?
I don't know about your person. I don't know who that is. I don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
I can speak to my theories around in general why this happens. I think, and especially when people are ethically minded or seemingly ethically minded, like the person we're talking about that I've been talking about, Cosmic Skeptic Alex O'Connor, is the recent very famous person who recently just did this. Um, and I've done a few videos about this, but I think that unfortunately, we are still a minority. And when I say vegans are a minority, I mean that as in actual vegans. So okay, the people who identify as vegan, they are a minority. The
Mm,
people of that identification group who are actually vegan, as in lots of people say, "Oh, I'm vegan," but they eat plant-based a couple of days a week, right? People, they don't understand what it means.
yeah.
So when we do a survey, well, oh look, 7% of the UK is vegan. No, they're probably not. It's probably like 0.7% of those people, right? So
Yeah.
it's we're a tiny minority of a minority of actual people who are ethically minded vegans. So the rest of the world, all the advertisement, all the media, all the TV, all the movies, everything else is constantly pushing you towards eat animal products, use animal products. It's not a vegan suitable world at all. So when people come out like, "Oh, I'm an ex-vegan," and we all wonder how the hell could this have happened? The question is more,
Yeah.
how did it take so long for it to happen? And when somebody goes vegan and stays vegan until they die, that's actually miraculous when you consider how much propaganda there is to try and convince you to not do that. The propaganda against us
Mm,
is so much more overwhelming than than the strength of our community. You know, so like unless somebody literally lives in some kind of community that is cut off from the world and it's only vegan community, and that's where you get these little vegan bubbles. And that's good that these little vegan
yeah,
bubbles exist and people can actually stay in a place where they feel that, you know, like-minded people. But the second you step out of that bubble, you are hit with this extremely powerful propaganda that's been going for the last 50, 60 years or longer. And these are people that are pushing this propaganda. They're experts. This is not some you know, some YouTuber or something. The people who are at the top pulling the strings on meat industry propaganda they're using propaganda techniques and psychology techniques that have been proven to be extremely effective, and they're all doing it constantly. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying these people can't be blamed. I'm saying that to understand why it happens is important. We can explain why they do it while still holding them accountable for doing it. They're still selfish pieces of shit, the people who do this, who know what happens to animals and go back to abusing them, but we can understand why they did it, and we can try and stop that from happening. And that's literally what activists are trying to do every day. We're trying to expose the propaganda constantly in the hopes that people stop falling for it. So yes, it's
yeah,
incredibly disappointing. And what can we do? I don't really know what we can do about it. I suppose the only real thing we can do is just to continue trying our hardest to get to show people that it's propaganda, show people how you got to stay strong-minded and don't loosen you don't weaken your minds to the propaganda from these industries. Try to remember all times they're trying to get into your head, constantly trying to get into your head. Don't let them into your head. That's on you. You got to keep that defense up high. Don't let them creep in, because once they're in, they've got years of experience of getting you to do what they want. So you've got to be very careful.
yeah. Some very wise words. I mean, in our situation, it was someone who was, in theory, a long-term vegan,
Mm,
who decided that for health reasons they could no longer be vegan, and he needed to eat a little bit of liver, which we pointed out was a little bit of an animal who was brutally slaughtered, brutally,
mm,
brought into the world unnecessarily, and we just couldn't get our heads around it. So we had quite a lot of um, heated debate on our actual Facebook page when we talked about
mm.
ex-vegans, because there was an article in the press about it as well,
Right, right.
and he felt as if he needed to justify it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. This whole there's this
yeah,
it's this these influencers like Liver King and others that have caused this. It's no
yeah,
nobody was talking about
yeah,
eating animal organs as much as they are now. It's a complete it's a complete counter reaction to the success and the new
yeah,
information about plant based diets. And what they do is they ride off the back of common things that people have,
mm,
both vegan and non-vegan. So, for example, across the
yeah,
world, the most common symptoms of almost every single disease are things like fatigue, muscle weakness, and the thing with fatigue and muscle weakness and foggy brain, that those things, they're so subjective. You could have a bad sleep and wake up
yeah,
with brain fog, right? Or feel weak because you slept badly, and
yeah,
you won't know that you slept badly because sometimes you don't remember. So you see, this is how incredibly
yeah,
vague and subjective this stuff is. But these people, they ride off it,
yeah,
and if you're a vegan, or you know, that's why you've got the brain fog. It's nothing to do with your sleeping badly, not drinking enough water, you're not exercising, you sit on your ass all day watching Netflix. No, no, it's none of that. It's specifically the
yeah,
diet that's causing the problem, and they ride off the back of these doubts that vegans have because we're the minority of a minority of a minority, aren't we? Like I said. And so we have these doubts
yeah,
sometimes. Am I doing the right thing? Does my diet okay? We've all questioned it because we're doing something that's not the norm. And they ride on that. And then that's how you
yeah,
end up with somebody like your guy who he went down that rabbit hole, unfortunately. And yeah, he was convinced he was played. And this is what I'm saying. The propaganda is
yeah,
everywhere. It's everywhere, and
yeah,
your position is the minority position. So you've got to be extremely strong to. I think every vegan in the world who actually is vegan and can stand up against this stuff. I mean, you are incredibly strong people because you're fighting against such insane propaganda every day. You don't even realize it. It's subconscious propaganda
yeah,
that we've all got to fight against, but you're doing it. So, you know, I think it takes some insane strength. So I appreciate everybody who continues to do it.
yeah, yeah, and we do as well. I mean, you're dead right. It is really, really hard to go out and be like to fight against what is seen as the norm. On a daily and hourly basis, it does get wearing, and but you do have to be totally committed, and you're kind of constantly bringing it back to the animals. And the reason why you're doing this, because we do the slaughterhouse vigils, we see all of the awful footage from a variety of exposes. So that's the reason why we always have to bring it back to the animals. Anyway, we're kind of running out of time now, David. It's been absolutely brilliant talking to you. And if people are wondering why we're on a different platform today, it's because I had a huge issue with Zoom, and David was very, very kind to stay with us and sort it out. So probably the next couple of interviews will be on a different platform. But thanks very much, David, for your patience and for sorting that out. Obviously, you're much more experienced in the IT sort of side of things than I am, but I'm really grateful that you stayed with us because a lot of people were really excited, that we had you on the show. So it's been really, really, really great talking to you. So I'm going to sign off now and say thank you very much to David Rams. My name is Anna Amelia from Northeast Animal Rights, and we'll see you again very soon.
Thank you.